It costs £80,000 and they're calling it the most desirable sports car in the world. It takes 100 craftsmen 180 hours to build a V8 Vantage. Aston point out that complex fittings, like the assembly for their pretty headlamps, is still done better by hand than robot. The Vantage's trump card is exclusivity. There are plans to build just 3,000 a year. By comparison, Porsche will make 10 times as many 911s. Add in a V8 that produces 380 bhp, which is more than a 911 Carrera S, and you can see why the waiting list is already more than 2 years long. The Vantage is a strict two-seater, although to improve luggage space, it has a hatchback. Inside, the stylish design continues, with dials, dashboard and switchgear all borrowed from the more expensive DB9.
I was a little bit disappointed when I first fired up this 4.3 litre V8. Just burbled away like any old V8. And in fact, even though I'm out on the open road and using some revs, I still can't really hear anything like the sort of crescendo you get from a Ferrari or even a Porsche 911. And you're totally unaware of this wonderful sound, which is apparently following somewhere behind me in my slipstream. When you're driving the car, you're very aware of this huge dash panel in front of you, and in fact, manoeuvring around car parks at slow speeds, the visibility is a bit poor over this big front hump. And in a way, it makes you feel like you are in a great big Aston Martin. You don't really appreciate that the car is quite small around you. And the steering, the clutch and the gear change are all on the meaty side as well. You certainly feel like you're in a pucker Aston. The best thing about this car is the way it just points. The steering turns, the car turns with you. There's a wonderful symmetry of handling that just gives you so much confidence on the road. And that torquey V8 has that wall of acceleration. Gear change good, none of these flappy panels. It's a proper car for proper racing drivers. Of course, Aston Martin have done a lot of development of this car on racetracks. So, of course, it'd be rude not to go and find a racetrack and really put it to the test. Has surprised me on this racetrack because it's just so neutral and controlled. It finds the apex okay, the front just pushes a bit wide on turn-in because this car is still a heavy car, but it's not dramatic and there's no suddenness. There's little twitches of oversteer, the high-speed stuff, loads. There's just down in this hairpin, second gear, turn, floor, and yes, there's some glorious oversteer, but so beautifully controlled. It really is a sure-footed car. What we're doing, just about 120 miles an hour. Third gear, punch to second, find that apex, hit the throttle, second gear, easily controlled power slide, out of that corner at what, 90 miles an hour up to now third. This has to be the best Aston I've ever driven on a track.
Join us after the break when we'll be back in the office offering you the chance to win an Aston of your very own.
Before the break, we saw Tiff. There he goes over the glorious swoops at Alton Park in an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and he said it was the best Aston he'd ever driven on a track. But that's not saying a lot, is it, Tiffy?
Well, no, not when you compare it to the great lumbering V8s of the 70s and 80s, but, you know, when you compare it to a Vanquish, you know, or the DB9, for example, you know, they're both pretty good handling cars, but that new V8 Vantage blows them both away. It's beautiful. But having said that, it still wouldn't be a 911 in a straight race.
How do you mean, why?
Well, the 911 is still a much nimbler car. It's 150 kilos lighter. But, you know, you can play with the weight transference. You can create a bit more understeer, create a bit more oversteer when you want it. Whereas the Aston is just stuck in that one slot. Sure-footed, safe, solid, but not nimble.
So ultimately, it's still a big old Aston then?
Well, yeah, it feels like a big old Aston. Yeah, it's still got that Aston trait.
But it doesn't look like a big old Aston, because I think it's the best proportioned and the best looking Aston.
Yeah, the looks are what really sell it for me, and the name and the heritage of the car.
Which is a bit of a relief, because all those people who've been on a 2-year waiting list haven't put £5,000 down without even seeing the car.
I guess they know that, you know, they gambled on the fact that it's going to become a big seller, which it looks like it is, because, you know, our backroom team have found that you can get one in November if you paid 15, maybe even 20 grand over the odds. So there's going to be a big markup on these cars when they first come out.
Also, they found a chap who bought 40 left-hand drive cars, just in case the people who'd ordered a right-hand drive car couldn't wait for theirs to be delivered, and they'll have the left hooker in the interim. But he's bought 40 of them.
I suppose there's nothing quite like owning an Aston.